You're listening to the Trailblazers Podcast, episode 31 with Ed Narain.
You're listening to the Trailblazers Podcast, where we will explore the stories of successful Black professionals. Join us as we highlight the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished trailblazers to help provide the know-how, confidence, and motivation you need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen Hart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Trailblazers Podcast. Today, our featured guest is a lifelong college friend of mine, Representative Edwin Narain. Ed is a dedicated member of the Tampa Bay community, and he served in various civic leadership roles for more than 2 decades now. Ed moved to Tampa in 1994 to attend the University of South Florida. Go Bulls. There, he was elected president of the student body, and that's where he and I first worked together, and I actually served in Ed's cabinet there. While at USF, he's also voted USF's first fall homecoming king. He helped develop the first student-driven United Way campaign, and he received the Department of Student Affairs' first Student Leadership Award. Ed's worked with several organizations that are committed to helping children and the working poor. He's a life member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Professionally, Ed is a regional director with AT&T and is a 3-time Florida Top Performance Manager of the Year. Ed earned a BA in psychology and an MBA from St. Leo University and his law degree from Stetson University. In November of 2014, he was elected to the Florida House of Representatives as a state representative for District 61. And while there as a freshman legislator, he was elected chairman for the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, earned the Florida Counties Association Champion Award, and receive a coveted Distinguished Advocate Award from the Florida Chamber of Commerce. He's married to his wife Monica, a public school teacher, and together they have 2 young daughters. Ed is presently running for the Florida State Senate District 19 race. And so without further delay, here's the one and only Ed Narain. Edwin, thank you so much for being our guest on today's episode.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
It's exciting to have you on. You've been an inspiration for me, even setting this podcast in place, man. You're one of the people I thought of when we were putting this all in place. And I've been wanting to get you on all year, man. You're a busy guy. So I'm really excited that we finally get a chance to chat.
Thank you. Well, I'll do my best not to disappoint you.
Nah, man. No such thing. So before we get going, I've found it to be a great starting point where we talk about gratitude a bit, right? So I'd love you to share with us what you're most grateful for in your life right now.
I got to tell you, it's a few things. First and foremost, top of mind is, health and life and strength. Just yesterday, I had to, with some family members, we put our money together to airlift my uncle, who was vacationing in Rotan and took severely ill, to airlift him back here to Florida to get some emergency medical treatment. And, it's a very scary situation when you get that call that somebody is, at death's door almost, and you got to find the resources to bring him back. So we're just glad that, he got into place last night, in the hospital, and they're taking care of him. So it always makes you really appreciate life, right? You bring a child into the world, takes 9 months. Somebody can be gone in 9 seconds. So, right now I'm most grateful for that. But traditionally, it's my family. I mean, my mom and dad have been a great inspiration to me and my brothers. And, to be married now almost 10 years in October, my 2 girls. I mean, I look at my life and everybody says, don't you want a boy? And I'm like, yes and no, but it's perfect. God he's done some amazing things with my family. And I'm really, really grateful for that.
Appreciate you sharing that. I will keep your uncle in prayer.
Please. Thank you.
So, for everyone listening, Edwin and I attended undergrad together at the University of South Florida in Tampa.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
And I actually served under Edwin when he ran student government at USF way back when, right? Like 97.
Oh, yeah. Oh man, don't remind me. It's been coming up on 20 years, man.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like 20 years ago, right? That we've known each other, and back when, wow, we had like inaugural season of football, right?
Yes, sir. So those are some good times.
Great times, man. But, I'm not the least bit surprised that you are in the position you are today, as a state representative for the Florida House, and you're now actually running for a seat with the state Senate, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The funny thing is, despite being the student body president way back in 1997, where Camilla Oliphant was my vice president, we made history statewide. It was a great time. It really was. There were some experiences in government that I kind of just said, I don't want to do this in my life, and I stepped away. And I was like you, I had to work my way through school, so I had my odd jobs, and eventually got into wireless, working for AT&T for the last 14 and a quarter years.
Wow.
And, the call to serve was always there. So I volunteered on a lot of committees. I was a member of a ton of boards here in town. And people would always say, you should run for office. You should run for office. I'd be like, no, I don't want that. I don't want that pressure. And then about 3 years ago, I was, coming out of an elevator with my boss, and we weren't talking about anything political at all. And he just looks at me and he's like, you really should run for office.
Really?
And I was like, you can't be serious. Yeah, my boss at AT&T. It kind of made me think that, if all these people are telling me this, maybe there's something to it. And so the state representative position was opening up. It was an open seat. My predecessor was term limited out. And I talked to people in the community just to get a gauge for it. And they said, absolutely, you should run. And it was a tough race, but we pulled it off, a 4-person race with 42% of the vote. And, I'm hoping for the same results here. I mean, this race is very similar to the last one. So an opportunity to do more for the community.
Ed, was there a specific moment, in your life when you actually realized that this was what you were born to do?
I'll be very honest. I don't know that I've even reached that point that I know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life yet.
Really?
I got in this, and I simply see serving in government as an opportunity to serve the people at a higher level. I can do more. When somebody comes to me with like a major problem, we can, get the wheels in motion to resolve it. This past year in session, we were able to bring back millions of dollars. For example, for the Tampa Heights Community Civic Association, they have a center. And the kids go there after school, and we had this major project that's coming through to expand the roadways, and it was going to tear up this community center that people had put their time and efforts in. So being able to bring back, $1.2 million to relocate that center so the kids still have some place to play, that's where I see my mission, being able to speak truth to power and have people understand that, look, when Ed Narain is speaking to you about something, he's telling you it from his heart, he's telling you the truth, and he's advocating for somebody else. So I can't tell you that I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I do feel like I'm doing a little bit of God's work here and making a difference in people's lives. So as long as I'm doing that, I'll be involved. The minute I feel like I'm not making a difference, I'll just go back to being Zahara and Elena's dad.
That's the most important job, right? At all times.
The most important job.
The most important job. Absolutely. You shared a little bit just a minute ago, but what was probably some of the biggest things you've learned about yourself since taking the state representative seat a couple years ago?
Being a state legislator is hard because you're in a part-time position, so you still have to maintain your day job unless you're independently wealthy. And my company has been extremely flexible and understanding and has worked with me. I mean, we had 3 special sessions last year. Nobody predicted that. So I think the one thing that I've learned about myself through the entire process is that I'm a leader. There are times in your life where you kind of doubt that. You can, serve in a lot of leadership positions and you can win all these awards, but until, people that you looked up to and admired in a process, and then you get in that process and they tap you and say, you really should consider taking on this role. And, the most recent example that I have is chairing the Legislative Black Caucus. I mean, Florida is the 3rd largest state in the country. And here I am walking in as a freshman legislator, and I had about 7 people approach me and say, Ed, you really should think about, leading the caucus. We like what you've been able to do. We trust you. We believe in you. And here's something that wasn't even on my radar. And, I thought for a little bit, and I was like, can I really do this? I mean, these are people who have years of experience in front of me. Should I really be thinking about running for this position? And, I kind of overcame my own little bit of doubt about it, ran for it, and basically won with an overwhelming support from the members. And
Wow.
We did some really good things this year that I'm proud of.
So we often don't get to higher places by ourselves, right? In this run, especially right now, you've had to hire or probably partner with the right people to help get you to where you are right now. How do you actually go about finding the right people for your team?
What's great is that a lot of the same people that you may remember from South Florida are helping out on this campaign. Samicia Bagley has been doing a great job as campaign manager. She was at USF, Delta Extraordinaire. She was a mom doing all kinds of stuff, and she's highly organized. So, that helps somebody like me that's jumping from issue to issue all the time, kind of stay focused on what we need to do. But, it's always a skill-will thing. Samicia is a great person, never ran a campaign before, and I can tell you that she has the will to learn. And in hiring, for AT&T over the last 8 years in management, one of the things that I've learned is somebody can walk in the door and not necessarily have the skill. Right. But as long as they have the will to learn, you can teach them the skill. And so, and identifying people to help the team, we're looking for the will mindset. If you got the will mindset, we can teach you the skill.
Right. It's very important, man. Mindset, attitude goes such a long way, right? Beyond just the raw skill, because you can teach them what they need to know, but you can't put that positive mindset and that positive attitude in them.
Very, very true. And, attitude makes a difference. It really does.
So, man, as far back as I can think, right? You've always been you've had this natural talent to be on stage, and those bright lights come on, you're just fluid with, speaking so eloquently. And I'm curious, how do you actually prep for really big moments when you're on stage, when you're, speaking to the house? Like, how do you actually prepare yourself for that?
I think it's like anything else. I study. When I'm in Tallahassee, I really try to know the ins and outs of the bills. We see a ton of bills during that 60-day session. And, I'll sit down and I'll take the time. I'm not always out, hanging out and that sort of thing. Really try to learn what is taking place or what potentially could take place if we were to pass a bill. Yep. And so I'll study the heck out of it. I'll sometimes write right there on the floor my comments, which I feel are sometimes the best way to go. But a little bit of nervousness is always a good thing. And that's the one thing that people don't realize, that all of us elected officials, anybody that does any type of public speaking, you're going to get a little bit of nervousness. Yeah. And the question is, how do you turn that into, a good speech or a good talk? And for me, I always kind of hype myself up a little bit, almost like Eminem. If you remember the movie 8 Mile and you're listening, getting ready to perform Lose Yourself, the words of that, it kind of gets you real hyped up. But it's true. This is your moment. Everybody's listening to you. This is your chance to advocate. And so I get myself hyped up, and then I just do it. And I can't even take all the credit for it. I just think it's, a gift that God gave me. Absolutely. Is to be able to speak to people and have them understand. So using it to help other people has always been what I wanted to do, and I'm blessed to do it.
Awesome, man. So, I know you're probably going through, you're in the midst of an election season, right? And
oh yeah.
In the thick of it. I can't imagine how many highs and lows you've probably had to withstand through, an election year to be able to survive and get to, the end of this, right? How do you actually remain and we're talking about mindset a minute ago, how do you actually remain in this confident and positive mindset throughout the pressures of this election season?
I'll tell you, I start every morning with prayer. And, not necessarily always on my knees. Sometimes it's in the shower. My wife will be, who are you talking to? And I'm like, I'm talking to God. But honestly, prayer is the foundation for everything that I do. When I walk on the house floor, before I speak, I always ask God to make sure that the words that are coming out of my mouth are the words He wants me to deliver. And, that's been helpful, because politics today, it's not so much about what's true. It's what you can get people to believe, unfortunately. And so people can smear you. Right now I'm in the midst of a nasty smear campaign where someone's accusing me of things that simply just aren't true, or taking bits and morsels of the truth and made them out to be these mountains. And unfortunately what happens is, people aren't always looking at the issues, and so they don't know the records. They just, I like that commercial, or I like this mail piece, and they vote for candidates, unfortunately, based off of what they see instead of doing their own research. And so it makes it easy for people to manipulate elections, which is unfortunate. But I do have faith in people. I do believe that at the end of the day, they always see the person who's doing the right thing, and that person usually wins. But there's some nasty campaigns out there, and there's a smear job being run on me like nobody's business. But I do believe, 22 years in this community and all the work that I've put in, people know, they know the truth, and at the end of the day, we'll prevail.
Standing with you, my man. You will prevail. I'm positive of that. We all make mistakes, right? Even in politics. maybe if you could share, what's one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made as a politician and as a leader? Maybe share with us, what happened and what you had to do to overcome it so you could actually move forward.
Well, you would ask me a tough question like that. If I had asked my wife, she'd probably say that one of the most recent and biggest mistakes that I made was waiting too long to jump into the state Senate race. We talked about doubt earlier and how sometimes doubt can keep you from moving forward. And, she said to me, maybe if you had gotten into the race sooner, some things would have been clearer for some of the other candidates. And maybe the dynamics wouldn't be playing out the way they've played out with some folks. And that was all a result of not really believing enough in myself, number one, and two, just kind of feeling like, look, you don't want to split a community. You don't want people to be upset, but you do want to do the right thing. Right. And so, it took me a minute to make up my own mind. And even after I made up my mind, I had to make sure that this is what God wanted me to do. And I felt after a lot of prayer, just one day I got a peace about the decision. It was something else. It was unlike anything else that I've seen and felt in a while, because when you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, you can move forward, and I don't care what happens. You just keep moving forward. You don't stop, and that's the stage that we're at. I know it'll get a little bit rockier, but I feel confident that we're doing the right thing.
When is your election day?
August 30th.
Wow.
A lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
We're all focused on Hillary and Trump, and, we got to make sure we back the right candidate there. But that's not till November. The real races that decide people's lives, the county commission and school board and state representatives, those positions are up.
Wow. So, none of this happens, right, without the love and support of your three big reasons. How do you actually make time for your wife and children in the midst of this busy election season?
I got to tell you, it's the hardest thing to do, between, working and then running your campaign, meeting all your obligations as a representative and then spending time with your family is very, very difficult. And what I try to do, my wife has been very hands-on in this race. 2 years ago, my youngest daughter was only 2, so she couldn't be as hands-on. But this time, she led our petition efforts and she got us on the ballot in less than 70 days. So I would have to say, when you incorporate your family, it makes it easier because you're not gone as much in their eyes, even though the girls still want to do things with daddy. I try to, help them by taking them to Dunkin' Donuts, for example, or give them a little treat. Let's go to the movies right quick. And just, making that time, even if it's 30 minutes of watching wrestling tonight, just so they know that daddy's still here and that this too shall pass. So I can't wait to get our family life back in order come the 30th.
Right. Ed, what are some, you're running for office. This podcast episode is going to live on long beyond that, right? People are going to be listening to this 2 years from now, and probably into, whatever you do, years down the road, right? What are some of the key attributes someone should be looking at Ed Narain for, and why you? Why now?
I think that's a really good question. I will tell you that I personally only have my children's future in mind when I run for office. There's a lot of us in our generation right now that we're kind of like, we're focused on building our careers, and that's important, right? I've spent a long time at AT&T now building a career, and when I pivoted to kind of do this public service thing, people said to me, you're crazy. You're on a path that could have you, as a C-level in the next 10 years with the company, but you're making this diversion and there's no money in it. There's nothing for you really to do. And I'm like, well, it's not just about the money. It's about being able to truly do something you're passionate about. And that's always been helping people. But more than helping people, I look at my children and I think, who's going to advocate for their future? Because a lot of the politicians that are out there now truly are just about themselves and what they can get out of it. And I'm thinking, okay, who better to shape my children's future and their friends' future than me? God gave me this voice. I need to use it. So, I've gotten out there and, when people look back, I think years from now, they'll say, you know what? Ed Narain always told the truth. Maybe I didn't like what he had to say. Maybe I didn't agree with him on this issue, but I know that when he was talking to me, he wasn't lying to me. He was telling me what he genuinely felt at that time. And I think that matters. And it's rare. You don't get people that, just tell you the truth anymore. I mean, one of the things that I tell my wife all the time is I get in trouble because I'm honest with people. And I hope history will reflect that I was always honest with people. I always told the truth.
Wow. So We're almost at the end of our time with you, but I wanted to have you share some of your resources with our listeners. So if you could tell
Sure.
us, maybe what's one book that you've read in the past that's inspired you most?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many. I'm still old school. I like to touch a book. I've got a Kindle app, but I'm looking at like 12 books over here on my nightstand right now. The most recent one, we took a trip to California, and I took, it's an older book. It's called All Labor Has Dignity by Martin Luther King, and it's really just a collection of his speeches, but most of them focused on the labor movement of the 60s. And a lot of people forget that, after a number of the civil rights laws were passed, the Civil Rights Act and then the Voting Rights Act right after that, Martin Luther King kind of shifted his message away from equal rights to more of an economic platform. In the United States of America, when we talk about equality, we don't want anybody denied because of the color of their skin or their race or who they love or any of that stuff. But what we do want is for everybody to succeed, especially economically. And what I found in reading this book and reading through those speeches is that the same arguments that we're having today politically about where people should be in this world in terms of, jobs, what type of jobs, skilled labor versus unskilled labor, these debates have been going on for a very long time. But the true equalizer in this country are the two E's, is education and economics. And as long as people have access to getting an education, they can participate in this economy. And that's what's always made America great, right? You go from any class to the middle class, and then hopefully the next generation can move higher. And as it's making sure those things are those ladder accesses are still in place. And that's what I loved about this book, hearing Dr. King advocate for that. I mean, if you think about it, when he was killed and assassinated in Memphis, what was he doing? He was advocating for garbage workers, sanitation workers to have an increase in pay. I mean, it was all about economics. And that's what I think can lift a lot of, especially black folks in this country. When you look at the poverty statistics and where African Americans are, we are still very much at the bottom rung when it comes down to income and education. And we have to fix that. We really do.
So, Ed, what's something small you've done this month that you're proud of?
Something small this month? Well, I always take the trash out on time. I'm still working on getting that out on time. Yesterday was the first day of school here in Hillsborough County, and last year, a friend of mine, Demetra Simmons, she was looking at a video from the 100 Black Men in Atlanta, and she said, that would be so cool for us to do in Tampa. And what it was a clap-in. We go to one of the schools, and we just cheer the kids on for the first day of school. And, most kids aren't going to be athletes on their high school team or their junior high school team, so they won't know what it's like to have people cheer them on in a game. Right. But, to look at their faces when we lined up last year, and I mean, here we're, and we didn't just do men. We had all young professionals from Tampa that wanted to participate. Wow. Came out. The chief of police was with us last year, and these kids are walking into school, and we're cheering them on, encouraging them to get good grades. And so, obviously, it's a new tradition that we started and something that we're going to continue to do, whether I'm in an elected position or not, because I think it's important for our kids to see African-American role models that they don't get to see traditionally. So, to go into the quote-unquote inner city, and here's a banker standing next to a lawyer who's standing next to a state representative, we as young professionals represent what these kids could be in the next 10 years. So it's a small thing, 15, 20 minutes out of our day, but I know it made a difference to those parents and those kids.
Dude, I love that. That's awesome. You're giving me ideas.
Hey, man, run with it. Steal shamelessly, because that's what we did.
That's right. So tell us about an online resource. It could be an app, software, or tool that you use every day and you can't live without it.
Man, I would have to say Twitter. As crazy as that sounds, a lot of people think of social media, it's Twitter and Facebook. But for me, it's Twitter because that's where I've gotten all my news from. When I think about, Whitney Houston when she passed, or Michael Jackson, I don't think it was Michael Jackson so much but I know Whitney Houston. It was like, whoa, this is on Twitter before it was anywhere else.
Yes.
CNN didn't have it. It was on Twitter. And so I'm constantly getting updates on what's happening in the world through that. And it's so strange, right? 140 characters. Like, how much could that tell you? It can tell you a lot. And so I think that's the one app that, is on my phone that I know I use the most. And then, of course, the Bible app, because when I roll over at 5 a.m. and I grab my phone, that's the first thing I try to do is read at least one passage of scripture every morning.
Nice. Good discipline. So, Ed, you're big on volunteering, my man. And before I let you go, I want to know, why is volunteering so important to you and giving back of your time, your talents, and your treasures?
Well, I'll tell you, it's something that I saw my parents do as kids, and they were doing this not to set an example for us, but because it was the right thing to do, right? The whole verse, given it shall be given unto you. We learned that as little kids. And so what I do, we've been taking our kids to any community service projects that we can, legally take them to, where they won't get in any trouble, because we want to set that example for them.
Right.
When I became a representative a few years ago, I found out about a program that's been around forever called Farm Share, where they literally, bring in this tractor trailer full of food that feeds, 500 people, 1,000 people. And we did this last December for the first time. And it was just amazing, in the middle of this food desert in our community, that where they brought in fresh vegetables like cucumbers and tomatoes and bread and cases of water. And you think, in America, people aren't hungry, right? They shouldn't be. We're the richest country in the world. Well, just between Hillsborough and Pinellas County, we got 140,000 kids that are chronically hungry. And that breaks my heart. And so as long as I can do something to just have an impact on kids and the elderly, give the kids a great education, make sure that they can eat, make sure they get off to a good start. And then when they become adults, they should be good adults. If not, we'll figure out a way to make them better. And then when seniors, the old expression, once a man, twice a child, we're all going to get old one day, hopefully. And you want somebody to be there to take care of you. So I think it's our obligation. Just watching my parents, man, it's just something I believe in. Everybody should volunteer.
It's awesome. Ed, I can't believe, time is running by and we're almost to my last question. But before I ask you my last question, I'd love to invite you to impart an inspiring message. You've been doing a good job at this all episode, but impart an inspiring message that can help our listeners to take action when they jump off this episode today.
I don't know how inspiring this will be, but I always tell my kids, don't say you can't do something. Okay. Jokingly, I call it the 3-4 letter F words, right? Fear, fall, and fail. A lot of times, we don't move. I didn't jump into this race for whatever the reason. And I think at the time it was like I was fearful of what people would think or what people would say. I was fearful of the fact that I might fail. What happens if I lose? And once you get past all of that, you start to realize that, yes, I can do this, and yes, I should do this. And you just do it. It's so simple. Like Nike's, patented that slogan for a number of years. But sometimes I tell my kids when I get frustrated with them and they say, I'm trying. I'm like, no, you're not trying. You're either doing this or you're not doing it. The word trying doesn't exist. You're never trying to do something. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. Right. So, anybody who's out there listening to us today, I'll tell you, it took me a long time to make that jump back into public service. But, get rid of that fear. Don't worry about falling. Don't worry about failing. Because if you're doing it, you never know who's watching you and who you're inspiring just by taking that jump, just by making that leap. And so, my goal is, to inspire my children one day, that they look back and say, wow, Dad, you did this and you did that and you changed this. So you mean to tell me it was like this before you did that and now it's like this? You just got to try, and don't be afraid. Just do it, whatever it is.
Yes, sir. Edwin Narain, when it's all said and done, how will the city of Tampa and the state of Florida be different in the years ahead for your daughters because of your service?
My hope is that my children decide to go away to college. As much as I'd like for them to go to USF and be Bulls, I want them to, venture out a little bit and then come back to Florida. Right now our economy is very tourism based. And so the jobs that, you find in other cities, the high skill, high wage jobs that you'll find like in Charlotte and in the tech industry out in San Antonio or Atlanta, a lot of kids leave Florida and don't come back because of that. And I want my girls to get that education wherever it might be and then come back to Florida because they want to live here, because there's a good job here for them where they can build a career. And so I believe that by the time my service is done in the legislature, we will have found a way to diversify the economy. We will have found a way to lift people out of poverty by paying them a livable wage, so that somebody who's working full time doesn't have to struggle to make ends meet, that they can actually afford things like transportation, like a gallon of milk, which is outrageous when you look at the prices today. Right. But nobody should be working 40, 45 hours a week and still needing government assistance. That's wrong in a country as rich as the United States of America is and the resources that we have. And hopefully people will see the state of Florida as a place to start a business, where entrepreneurs say, I'm going to Florida because they've got a great regulatory environment. The taxes are low, and they love the idea of creating something from scratch in great, beautiful weather where there's absolutely no snow.
Most of the
hoping
time.
to be a change agent. Most of the, yeah, we do get those unusual years. But, look, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and because of who I work for, people accuse me of being too close to big business and all this other stuff. Let me just share, if you got rid of big business, how many people are going to have jobs? You're losing thousands of jobs if you got rid of some of these companies. And it's not fair to lump, all big companies into the same boat as one or two bad actors that may be out there. What we have to do, though, is to teach people critical thinking skills so that they can think for themselves and so they can create jobs on their own, so they can be entrepreneurs. And so I just want to be a change agent for this area. I want young people, especially young African-American people, to realize that there really isn't anything holding them back, that no matter how difficult the circumstances are, there's somebody out there that has it harder. And if I can make their way easier by being their next state senator, I'm going to do that. But I want people to feel empowered to achieve in this state. So hopefully that happens.
We're believing it, my brother. So, Ed, I am inspired. You're picking me up, my man, and I'm encouraged by you. And again, I'm praying for you. We believe that this race is going to move in your direction. I just want to say thank you, man, for coming on the podcast today and pouring into our community of listeners. You're now a member of the Trailblazer community, and we look forward to talking to you in the future, right? With all the new activities and happenings. This is a milestone that we were able to capture right now, and we want to capture some more on the other end, right?
Thanks for your faith, man. I appreciate you. Your patience. You invited me to come on, and I was like, I got to carve this time out.
Before I let you go, I want you to tell us, tell our listeners how they can learn, especially for our listeners in Florida. How can they learn more about your platform and stay connected to you?
Probably the best way is going to be Facebook. We have a Facebook page. It's Ed for Florida, all spelled out. We also have a website, which is you can go to www.edforflorida.com or ednarain.com. And that'll bring you to our website where we've got videos and pictures of different things. But, I try to be active with the latest and greatest tools and social media. I have to admit I'm getting rusty because, I just got on the gram, as they say, a few months ago. And, don't even ask me what Snapchat is.
The good news is,
like that, get on Snapchat.
That's some good news for you. Instagram just came out with stories, which is basically biting on Snapchat. So except for maybe a couple features. Once you figure out Instagram, you basically kind of covered both.
Look, man, I can only do 2 social media platforms at one time. So Facebook and Twitter are it. and I'm failing miserably at Facebook.
Nah, man.
Thank God for Tamithia.
You're good. You're good. You're doing good. For everyone listening, I'll go ahead and post all of Ed's links on our show notes page at tvpod.com. Ed, thanks so much, my brother.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate it. All the best to you and your family.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I'll be posting links to all of today's book recommendations and links mentioned on our show notes page at tbpod.com. If today was your first time listening to the Trailblazers podcast, I just want to extend a warm Trailblazers welcome to you. We're so happy to have you here, and we encourage you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcast app. Go ahead and browse through some of our past episodes to keep the knowledge flowing. If you're a fan of the podcast and today's content, and you're maybe already subscribed to the podcast, please continue to share and invite your friends, your family, your colleagues to listen to an episode that you think might impact them most. We believe that someone listening to these inspiring stories will be moved to make significant changes that will have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Don't miss next week's episode. New episodes are released each and every Monday by about 5 a.m. Eastern. Trailblazers, jump off this podcast today. Go find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail. Cheers.